Emily Blunt and Chris Evans are highly paid drug dealers in the new Netflix drama Pain Hustlers. This story is based on true events, but are those events worth a movie? After losing her job, a blue-collar woman struggling to raise her daughter takes a job at a failing pharmaceutical startup, only to get involved in a dangerous racketeering scheme. So you might be thinking that this is just another redo of Dope Sick or Painkiller, but in reality, this shares way more with Boiler Room than those other two opioid-centric releases. Now here, Emily Blunt is a single mom who's barely scraping by when she gets a job offer from a slimy and skeezy Chris Evans. He's a pharma rep and dazzles her with the potential of huge money. Problem is, though, their product is something no doctor is prescribing, so they need to figure out how to make that first sale and get an endorsement, which will then help to open the gates for future sales. Now, a minor part of the focus of this movie is what the drug does and whether or not it's effective and or addictive. Really, though, it's more about how Blunt helps to transform the sales arena into something that's incredibly successful. But they also begin then to ride the line of legality. Blunt's daughter, played by Coleman, she's outstanding to watch in this. She's got incredible charisma, and the best part of the film were the interactions that the duo shared, which thankfully were more than a few. And their conversations feel genuine, capturing both the highs and lows of a mother-daughter relationship, while also dealing with complications that the story throws in for additional drama. Now, I loved seeing them together, and really, I could have used even more of that. But because it's not the central theme of the movie, that relationship takes a back burner position to how Blunt and Evans grow the company and then turn massive profit. Many scenes feel just like other movies that follow this trajectory, where there's an individual that comes into a business, shakes up some of the protocols, and then makes everything work, only to later find out that because they've been utilizing sketchy business practices, the law is going to be coming for them soon. Then the question becomes, will they learn their lesson from illegal activities, or won't they? Now, earlier I'd mentioned this has a lot in common with Boiler Room, and that's both a compliment and a critique. Now, I don't know if that movie still holds up, but it was a tense and exciting ride watching the chaos and stress of these traders scamming the public. The way they spoke, trained, and spent their money is very similar to what goes on in Pain Hustlers. It doesn't really matter about a salesperson's background or experience. As long as you can close a deal, you are golden, and you're going to make a ton of cash. There's also a complete disregard for ethics and the end user. Now, I do like how this movie somewhat drifts away from that last idea, especially as we watch Blunt carry out conversations and interactions. She really does have a good heart, and despite blurring the lines of legality, she wasn't acting out of a motive of pure greed. Now, the greed was there as a strong influence, but she also showcases some integrity when it comes to her actions. Now, it's fun to watch Chris Evans in anything other than his Captain America role. Now here, he's much closer to his dirtbag Knives Out character than a superhero, but I still had a really tough time connecting with his persona. The story keeps him pretty much at arm's length, and he's also one-dimensional, so there aren't any facets of his personality that create nuance or depth for the character. I think he worked well against Blunt, and they had good dynamics, but he's just kind of there on the screen, not bringing anything overly memorable to the story. Two other actors featured in this in supporting roles are Catherine O'Hara and Andy Garcia. Now, O'Hara is more grounded and less out there than she is with a lot of her characters lately, creating a caring mom at some points and an opportunistic seller at others. Now, she's not wholly unlikable, but there are times that I struggled to sympathize with her. Now, as far as Garcia goes, he's kind of been the same character in the last few things I've seen. Like, he's just showing up, saying his lines, collecting a paycheck. I mean, nothing was outstanding from him, and his character was so generically written that anyone could have stood in his shoes and given a similar performance. Now, in addition to these shortcomings I just mentioned, the story is overly long and takes way too much time to tell, except for presenting the conclusion. Now, this is just over 2 hours. The time is very noticeable. But for the first 90 minutes, we're watching the building of this drug sales empire, complete with parties, flashy cars, and questionable ethics. But then, the entire crux of the narrative is wrapped up in less than 30 minutes. Everything has been leading to this point, and when that culmination arrives, it's rushed and comes at lightning speed. I would be much more in favor of trimming some of the first two-thirds to then lengthen and create more development for the finale. This is sort of a crime story, so it would be good to watch more of the investigation play out rather than the feds just showing up, saying a few lines, and then a plan is in motion to bring charges. Now, I do know that all that I've said probably sounds like this isn't a good movie. That's not the case. I mean, there are some good things within it, and most of the acting, it's excellent. but the story fails to create an emotional attachment to both the characters and the plot, taking what could be an excellent story of a mom's determination and the ramifications of getting mixed up in corporate greed, but instead, we get a story we've seen multiple times before that unfortunately doesn't bring anything fresh to the screen. So overall, what it comes down to is several movies share the same type of storytelling and premise, but are presented more engagingly and memorably than Pain Hustlers. Emily Blunt, Chloe Coleman, Chris Evans, and Catherine O'Hara deliver good performances, especially with the dynamics between Blunt and Coleman. And while the movie is acceptable as a whole, it's missing the emotional connection and draw to the characters, along with a rushed conclusion, which in turn makes the entire narrative lackluster and long. There's sex, nudity, a lot of profanity, and just a little violence. I give Pain Hustlers 2.5 out of 5 couches. So have you seen any good dramas lately? I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.